I'm going to kindly apologize to everybody in advance for this episode. You will find out why.
What you are about to witness is an odd show made for odd humans.
Welcome back, everyone, to Well, That's Weird. My name is Madame De Fer, and I'm here to discuss all things unusual, disgusting, and sometimes comedic. In today's case, very comedic. I would not be Madame De Fer if I did not make one of my first episodes dedicated to two incredible films in the genre of body horror. Now, you could say I have an unhealthy love of body horror, and you're probably right. What better way to channel a love for something like that into a series like this? For my part 1 episode on body horror, we are going to talk about two incredible movies that take the top of the cake for the genre. One of the films we are going to discuss is one that everyone is discussing right now. And if you haven't gone to see it and haven't heard of it, you're living under a rock. This is a film that got a spectacular spotlight for a genre that doesn't normally get this kind of attention. The second film we're going to talk about is by a director that you definitely know, but a movie that you may not have heard about. Something that goes back to his horror comedy roots. So without further ado, let's get into this incredible episode that is going to feature the films Dead Alive and The Substance. Before we go any further, I would like to remind watchers of my show that my episodes are full of spoilers. If you haven't seen either of these two films but you want to, stop this video right now, go watch them, and come back here, because I'd love to hear what you think about them. And I'd love to hear if it aligns with what I felt about the films. Why don't we jump into it first with a quick little definition on what body horror is? Body horror is a subgenre of horror that focuses on the unnatural, graphic transformation, degeneration, or destruction of the human body. Awful stuff, but also great stuff. And for me personally, one of my favorite subgenres of all time. Preys upon my deepest fears about something bad happening to me physically, losing something, having something turn into something that I'm not equipped to deal with. The whole idea of it is just brilliant. You might find this to be an interesting choice, but one of the first films that I would like to talk about when thinking of the body horror genre is actually Dead Alive from 1992. Directed by the incredible Peter Jackson, this film stars Timothy Baum, Diana Penalver, and Elizabeth Moody. A young man's mother is bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey. She gets sick and dies, at which time she comes back to life, killing and eating dogs, nurses, friends, and neighbors. This was one of Peter Jackson's first films before he was set off to bigger pastures, going on to be the director of the Lord of the Rings series, the Hobbit series, and of course, King Kong. And known for incredibly long movies, I'm very, very happy to say that this is not a very long movie. Thank you, Peter Jackson. Even though this movie is a body horror film at its finest, it's disguising a lot of really awesome themes of growing up and coming to terms with adulthood. Because at the crux of this film, what it is a boy who can't let go of his mother. There's no better way to describe how this movie plays out than to just dive straight into the plot. So that's what we're going to do. Some of you may know this film as Dead Alive, but some of you may also know this film as Brain Dead. Not to be confusing, it just adds an extra wash of color to this whole situation. For the purposes of this review, I'm going to be talking about Dead Alive because I watched the 97-minute version of it that's available on YouTube. The film opens up on a very, very familiar place to those of you who love King Kong films, and that would be Skull Island. Very, very fun, because Peter Jackson would then go on to make a King Kong movie. You can tell a man has a love for a monkey. And this whole film begins with a zookeeper and hired help essentially going to find a Sumatran rat monkey on Skull Island. So these rat monkeys are contaminated rats breeding with unsuspecting and unconsenting monkeys Doesn't make a ton of sense, doesn't have to. This is the moment in the film where you just have to suspend your disbelief and enjoy the ride. What I also love is in the King Kong movie that Peter Jackson would make in the 2000s, he also has a little ode to the Sumatran rat monkey in one of the opening scenes in the boat when they're going to Skull Island. Very fun. We love an homage. So as this keeper is trying to get this monkey, he gets ambushed. At one point, the monkey bites him, and in a fit of fear, the hands kill the zookeeper. All this shows that this rat monkey is not to be messed with. Why are there indigenous people coming after these guys who are trying to capture this monkey? Why is a monkey bite a warrant for death? We don't know yet. We're going to find out. And it's going to be amazing. And unfortunate for anybody who gets affected by this. What follows after this crazy intro scene is an introduction to one of our main characters, Paquita, played by Diana Penalver. So we cut to Paquita. She's working at a store. She's down on her luck. She loves this guy who doesn't seem to care about her. And so she ends up going to have a tarot reading with her grandmother, who tells her that she is going to meet her forever love. She is not going to have another love. This love is the love, except he comes with quite a bit of baggage. On that note, we are then introduced to the very hopeless and very sad Lionel. Lionel is about to be our focus. He is the one who is about to experience what it means to really grow up. Lionel and Paquita meet. It's destiny. And at that point, for the rest of the film, Lionel will not be able to shake Paquita. But that's what's funny in the comedy aspect of this film, is that in all of this chaos that's about to ensue, Paquita's just down. She is a ride or die because destiny spelled it out and she's in. Lionel not being able to shake Paquita is a little bit of a problem because his mom, Vera, is incredibly possessive. Vera can't let go of Lionel. I think Lionel for her is filling a bunch of holes, particularly the one that the death of her husband left. Vera is a very possessive woman and is not about to let Lionel fall in love with this crazy woman who just showed up on his doorstep. It's not about to happen. One day, Lionel and Paquita sneak off to the zoo. And I'm sure you can see where this is going. They make their way over to the Sumatran rat monkey exhibit, and there's all sorts of bad stuff happening there. That monkey cannibalizes another monkey. It's just not good, and you know that this is just a bad path that we're going down. Made even worse by the fact that you're made aware that Vera is actually following Lionel and Paquita on their date. She gets a little too close to the rat monkey exhibit, and lo and behold, gets bit by the rat monkey. She does this amazing curb stomp to this monkey, though, and takes this thing out. Very quickly, Vera is about to become enemy number one with that bite. Lionel is then led on to the fact that Vera is there, obviously, because she gets bit. He takes her home, taking care of her, but it's really obvious that whatever she has contracted is going to put her on a very, very quick, rapid downfall. That night, Paquita shows back up at Lionel's house. What then happens is an incredible montage between Vera disgustingly degrading with this virus and Lionel and Paquita having a romp in the bedroom. The next morning, Lionel and Vera forget that there are guests coming to the house for some board that Vera was accepted in. To be honest, I don't really remember exactly what it is. But Vera is very much so a woman of her appearance, and you can tell that right off the get-go, but further enforced by the fact that even though she looks like crap and feels like crap, she lets these people in and feeds them lunch. This is one of those strong scenes in the film that really stands up for itself and really shows you how much this film means business. The sound design is absolutely disgusting. Vera is pussing. She's oozing. There's custard on the table, and there's an incident with that and pus. The thing is absolutely disgusting, but in making a scene like that, you really can tell that the people behind the camera had a really fun time. These scenes, if not freaking hilarious would be absolutely repulsive. And I can see this scene being the scene that turns people off of this film. That being said, if you proceed and continue to watch this film after this scene, you are in. You're too far gone at this point. So let's just finish the ride. Things are progressively getting worse. The people leave the house after this disgusting lunch. And 𝘲𝑗𝐻𝑒𝑖𝑡𝑎 shows back up to the house, this time with her dog Fernando. Fernando unfortunately becomes one of Vera's first victims, and we get one of the best lines that has ever been uttered in a film.
Oh, Fernando! Your mother ate my dog!
Not all of it.
So that's a thing. And at that point, Lionel can't ignore the fact anymore that his mother has gone downhill and needs to call a nurse over to deal with the situation. The nurse shows up. She's checking Vera over. 𝘲𝑗𝐻𝑒𝑖𝑡𝑎 goes to help pack up. And at that point in the process of that happening, Vera dies. But she won't be dead for long. And unfortunately, that nurse won't be human for long either, because the second victim of Vera's ends up becoming the nurse. What then plays out is another horrifically disgusting yet incredibly comedic scene of slapstick. The Three Stooges would have dug this film. It's chaos, it's cuckoo. 𝘲𝑗𝐻𝑒𝑖𝑡𝑎's still upstairs dealing with all the packing, which is great. So in the meantime, Lionel can shove Vera and the nurse in the basement and deal with that later. He plays 𝘲𝑗𝐻𝑒𝑖𝑡𝑎 off, and at that point, he can then regroup and figure out what he's going to do with his dead mother. The next scene is odd. All I'm going to say is Nazi German vet and tranquilizers. You'll get the gist. It's 2025. You'll get the gist. He needs these tranquilizers in order to keep the zombies at bay, especially his mother, who's about to be buried and have a funeral here in a short period of time. During the funeral, we are introduced to Uncle Les. He is disgusting, and he's a bigot, and he's sexist, and I have nothing to say about him until we get to the end, so we're going to leave it at that, but he is just gross, and he sets up a whole nother fun dynamic of this family. Basically, everybody except Lionel sucks. And Les is no exception. That night, Lionel has to go back to the cemetery to go dig up Mama, because she's not quite dead yet. The timing coincides with the arrival of a leather motorcycle gang showing up to hang out in the cemetery. The plot is a little loose with how they get there, but they assume that Lionel is grave digging. In the midst of all this fighting between Lionel and this gang, Vera bursts out and makes good on these guys by infecting them with this Sumatran rat monkey virus. In a zombie outbreak, no matter the zombie outbreak, here is some sound advice. Don't let zombies bite you. You are going to become a zombie. This is just 101. I shouldn't be the first person to tell you this, but if I am, read my lips. Don't get bit by a zombie. All these things are starting to get out of hand until the priest shows up to the cemetery. And in my opinion, this is the best scene of this whole film, because you proceed to watch this priest kick so much ass. And you want to know why he's kicking so much ass? Because he kicks ass for the Lord.
I kick ass for the Lord.
I adore this whole bit up until the point where the priest gets bit and he has to join the zombie gang, which is very fitting and absolutely a great addition to the crew. We then proceed with a few weird scenes that end up bringing us to the climax of this film. The zombies are all hanging out in the basement. They're being tranquilized. At one point, the priest and the nurse copulate and have a baby zombie. There's an amazing scene that apparently was one of Peter Jackson's favorite scenes to film. And it's this scene where Lionel takes the baby on a walk through a park where there's all these other mothers and babies in carriages and things happening. It's amazing. You can tell that the people who wrote this film, one of them being Peter Jackson's future wife, were big in a comedy, but also really big in a slapstick. It's very, very obvious. Lionel also tries to break up with 𝘲𝑗𝐻𝑒𝑖𝑡𝑎 at this point. There's also this struggle with Uncle Les for the estate and for the house. Everything is kind of brewing and is at the point where it is about to bubble over. In a fateful moment, Uncle Les decides that he is going to move into the house and throw a really epic party, inviting a ton of people over. What he does not know is that all these zombies that Lionel has been accumulating are all still in the basement of the house. There's been no setup like this ever in film that doesn't end in a lot of blood. But you're going to be really surprised at how much blood. Because for a really long time, Dead Alive was known as one of the bloodiest movies ever made, and a majority of that takes place in these ending scenes during this party. During the party, Paquita shows up. She thinks that Lionel is having a rip-roaring time after they've broken up, and she's pissed. She finds him in the basement, but ultimately also finds all these zombies, including his mother, who she thought was dead. And again, based on the tarot reading, she's not afraid. If anything, she further digs her heels in. She's committed to Lionel. And it's pretty shocking, to be honest with you. Paquita and Lionel realize that they need to do something in order to keep the zombies further at bay while all this stuff is happening in the house with this party. In trying to give the zombies tranquilizer, there is a mix-up of compounds on the table, and Vera is given a dose of stimulant rather than tranquilizer. And you know it's all over from there. The stimulant is delivered, and all hell then breaks loose. The zombies get out, it becomes a bloodbath, and everyone is susceptible to being bitten and turned. The last half an hour of this film is just party, zombie, blood, lawnmower, chaos. We have zombies being turned into light fixtures. We have blender zombies. We have that baby zombie running around creating all these issues. And then we have some standout characters like Paquita, who is somehow able to kick so much zombie butt. We have Uncle Les, who's able to hold his own for a really long time. At one point, there's an amazing scene where he is pulling the teeth out of a zombie's face so that the zombie can't bite him. Very, very clever. And two things worth mentioning at the end that are particularly fun is one, the disgusting intestinal butthole that we have running around farting at the end that is zombie infected, so somehow can exist without a body. I don't know. I'm not here to explain it. It just happens. I just think you should know. Don't say I didn't warn you. And the other thing is the lawnmower. The lawnmower is a very, very fun prop. Towards the end of the zombie onslaught, Lionel uses the lawnmower to take out a ton of zombies, and this is where all the blood effects really start to come into play. In the actual lawnmower, when they were filming, they had a tube that they were running blood through to shoot out during the scenes, and it is just amazing. The amount of gore and prosthetics and practical effects that they dedicated to this is mind-blowing. I told you at the beginning of this review that this film is all about the process of growing up. And that's exactly what happens at the end when Lionel and Paquita are confronted with a gargantuan, stimulated, bloated Vera monster. This is a good time in the film to mention that not only did they use a lot of miniature models for this, but they also used some good force perspective. And so it's really cool, especially this end scene on the roof with Lionel and his big bloated mother duking it out to the end. At one point, Vera tries to suck Lionel back into her womb, into her stomach as this monster. It's like a Venus flytrap looking thing. And the metaphor is just astounding, right? It's like, you are not going anywhere. You are mine. And what ends up happening is through that, Lionel breaks out of Mama, busts out, kills her, and does everybody a big favor by ending this nightmare. I still can't believe this person would let it go this far, but I can believe it if he were so in the throes of his own situation with his mom that he doesn't see how bad it was. Vera is very obviously abusive throughout this whole film, but Lionel seems somewhat complacent and okay with it. But I think the anger and the mistreatment that happens once she's bitten is a dose of reality for Lionel once he gets to the end of this movie and sees that there's no going back with her. That part of it takes a very serious tone, and is something I think a lot of people can relate to. It's a great film. Again, I cannot say enough about the directing, the writing. Even though it's guised as a horror comedy, because of the amount of gore and blood and violence in the film, it has become indefensible for some people. There are some countries that have banned this movie, and there are other countries that have made sweeping edits to the original version of what came out as Brain Dead. But out of it, we also have this version of Dead Alive that hit the United States. And I think that that cut stands out on its own as a really magical viewing experience. So definitely go check out Dead Alive. You can watch it on YouTube, pretty easy to find. But otherwise, go rent it. Give a little love to Peter Jackson. The guy obviously has a lot of innate directing talent, but has also shown and proven himself to be a lover, a deep lover of filmmaking. And for that, my hat's off to you, Mr. Jackson. And for this film, on the weirdness scale, it absolutely gets a, well, that was super weird. If it weren't for the excessive amount of gore, if it weren't for the heavy comedy and all of the zombies, it might not have gotten that high of a rating. But this is such an unusual film to have come out from such a prolific director in his beginning years that I think more people should go and check it out. It's definitely unique. It's definitely not for the weak of stomach and definitely not for the weak of heart, but I highly recommend it. And if you're weird like me, you're going to love it. Now, let's talk about the substance. As a fan of body horror, I knew I would love this movie the minute I saw the poster. You see a poster with an exposed back, and you hear a synopsis that touches on body horror, and you think, Demi Moore starring? Margaret Qualley starring? Dennis Quaid starring? Okay, I'll play ball. The Substance just came out in 2024. Directed by Coralie Farge, starring Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid. A fading celebrity takes a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. What I love about this film, there is no scarier way to show your aging and your fade into obscurity than by exposing the cracks in your own psyche. I think there are a lot of people that accept that aging is a reality of life. And then again, there are a lot of people who are spending their lives fighting that inevitability. This movie is about that struggle. It's a deeply toxic look at a woman who sees no worth within herself except in how she looks and how she presents to the public. And it's awful. This movie made me feel really bad for people who are in the spotlight all the time. I can't imagine what the pressure of having to constantly be on looks like, but this movie did a really good job of showing me what I think can be interpreted as a real experience for a lot of public figures. The similarities to Dead Alive are in the use of practical effects, the comedic angle, and using body horror to identify a deep pain point in the human experience. For The Substance, it's that feeling, that rushed, inevitable feeling of getting older. As we start the film, we have some cool egg imagery that is going to follow as a through line throughout the whole film. You're going to see eggs, yellow, yolks represented in a few different ways. That's also something really fun about The Substance is once you start paying attention, you start to see all these color and image motifs that tie everything together. It's a really sound script and incredible considering that Coralie wrote it and directed it. I find her gaze and interpretation of this world to just be wonderful. We open up the film with Elizabeth Sparkle. Elizabeth Sparkle is a few different things, has tried her hand in a few different buckets, in a few different arts, but she really found her landing by being the star of an aerobics show on TV. And in the beginning scene of the film, you actually see her Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame. You see them install the star on the Walk of Fame. You see the debut of the star where Elizabeth shows up and everybody's excited and they're talking about her. She's the center of attention. And then through a series of images set up as a montage, you see the slow degradation of the star. You start to see people who are just walking by it, don't acknowledge it. Oh, was she in that film? Or, oh, did she do that thing? Those people end up fading into time. And this was a perfect, exemplary way to show that fade in time. Having lived off Hollywood Boulevard for a little bit, that scene in particular really struck a chord. Even on the boulevard now, you can see stars' names of people that were around in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and how far away we are from those moments when those people were highlighted and put on a pillar and put into this Walk of Fame. I mean, the inevitability of it all. And that's what's funny about this movie. This movie could be described as inevitability because everything that happens in this film is inevitable. You know it the minute the substance is introduced into Elizabeth Sparkle's life that everything coming was fated. So after the star, we are really truly introduced to Elizabeth Sparkle. She's finishing up her show, Sparkle Your Life, and she's cleaning herself up and she goes to the bathroom to get washed up. When she goes to the bathroom, she sees that the woman's room is out of order, so she goes into the men's room. She's cleaning up and she's changing in a stall when we are introduced to Harvey, aka Dennis freaking Quaid. He plays one of the biggest schmucks I have ever seen in a film, and that is coming after watching Dead Alive with Uncle Les. The angles in this film make everything. There's all these disgusting, terrible close-ups of Dennis Quaid that really highlight the animal in him, just the wrinkles and the snottiness, and there's a scene where he's sloppily eating food, and it's just vile. In a visual storytelling standpoint, how they frame Harvey in every scene is this man is disgusting. He's physically disgusting. He's verbally disgusting. He just covers all the bases of what you expect some slimy Hollywood executive to be. So he's talking smack about Elizabeth in the bathroom, and she knows that her time is running out. We then cut to a lunch with Harvey, the lunch where he proceeds to eat the most disgusting food in existence, as he tells her that she is no longer going to be the star of her show and that they need to look for somebody younger. But it's nothing personal, seriously. Except Elizabeth takes it incredibly personally. Off the bat, that sour flavor is just in your mouth. The realization that this beautiful, gorgeous celebrity is apparently at the end of her run. By the way, this is all happening on Elizabeth's birthday. Just a slap in the face if there ever was one. She's driving away from this lunch and sees a billboard of hers being taken down. As she's distracted by the billboard being taken down, she has a car accident. She's in the hospital. She's exposed. She's vulnerable. She's crying. And at one point, this young male nurse introduces her to a USB stick with information concerning something called the substance. She gets this USB. She's not really sure what to think. As she's leaving the hospital, she runs into an old childhood friend named Fred. Fred is the epitome of the nice guy. He's the guy that isn't hyper obsessed with Elizabeth's looks. He's not hyper obsessed with her status. He just thinks she's beautiful and just wants to spend time with her. So he gives her his number on a disgusting piece of like wet paper. It's actually his cholesterol levels that he's like, please don't look at my levels. So the levels are bad. He drops the paper in like muddy water and gives it to her. And the whole thing is so embarrassing. You can feel the embarrassment in Elizabeth. And yet at the same time, the saddest part about Fred is he is the nicest person to her this whole film. No one in this film treats her like a human being other than Fred. He's kind of the pillar of good behavior in this movie that shows us that not all people are shit. But he's just one guy. And this movie is not about to be held up by his niceness. So Elizabeth goes home. She watches this super techno minimalist video describing the substance. And the one thing I will say about this video is I think that the directions are clear enough. I just think the stakes aren't raised enough. And people probably don't really know what they're getting into with this substance. I mean, I think if Elizabeth was aware that another version of herself would be splitting out of her back and would take complete advantage of her, I don't think she would have started this journey. I think the idea of her falling for the substance is just so rooted in her own lack of confidence that her downfall is inevitable. After she watches the video of the substance, she throws it away and you think, okay, she's done with it. And then it cuts to a scene later on. Her back is exposed. She's out at a bar having a drink, but her wrinkles are visible and the tiredness in her face is obvious. And she keeps looking over at this young couple. And then it cuts to her falling asleep, hung over, waking up, and she looks terrible. And the whole way that evening goes, the next morning, she is feeling low enough that she decides she's going to pursue the substance. She calls, she gets this number, she has to go to this weird, shady place in order to get the substance. It's so creepy and unusual, and especially for somebody living such a high level of living to have to then go to this shady warehouse where the door isn't even working correctly. She has to crawl into this building in the most unusual, unnatural way. It's funny how, metaphorically speaking, low she has to go in order to get this drug to improve her life. So she's aware that this drug is going to make a better version of her, but that the two of them are one and that they have to share this symbiosis together. I just think that the stakes aren't raised enough in this whole scenario for this to be okay. If you're really aware of physically what was going to happen to your body in order to take this medicine to make a better version of yourself, I think if a lot of people knew the deep risk involved, they wouldn't do it. So Demi Moore ends up going home. She takes the substance. There's an amazing transformation scene where there's eyeball splitting, there's back splitting, there's even conscious splitting where they used all these trippy visuals, which they actually shot practically in order to show Elizabeth splitting her conscious into two people. A lot of the techniques they used for these scenes in particular, with the actual splitting of Elizabeth into Sue and the further transformations that take place later on in this movie, are amazing. From there, we are introduced to the beautiful Margaret Qualley playing Sue. Sue is the new, improved, and better version of Elizabeth. And honestly, to keep it fairly short, she slides into Elizabeth's life quite well. She ends up becoming the new hire for this new aerobics show for the channel that Elizabeth used to work on. So we get a new show called Pump It Up with Sue. Amazing. On a side note, does anybody still watch aerobic shows on TV? Is that a thing? But Sue is feeling alive. She feels good about herself. People can't stop looking at her. People that treated Elizabeth poorly as the older version of herself somehow miraculously turn around and with Sue treat her with the utmost respect. And the idea behind the two splitting is that even though their bodies are separate, these two share a conscience. Sue can't do anything without Elizabeth, and Elizabeth can't do anything without Sue, and that becomes a problem as time goes on. And while their conscience is shared, the way I interpret it is that as Sue becomes more and more prolific and accepted, Elizabeth starts to push herself more wayside. And even as things physically start to happen between the two of them, I think that Elizabeth's confidence is so low that she just accepts what's coming for her until it's too late. So Sue is also so dreamlike. All the shots of Sue are colorful and hypersexual and beautiful. This film is very explicit about what you should be thinking and what you should be looking at. 𝘂 starts to become more ambitious, like I said. These two women are supposed to be 7 days on, 7 days off. So 𝘂 gets 7 days, Elizabeth gets 7 days. They share stabilizer fluid between themselves in order to keep themselves alive. However, if you abuse the timeline and go over your 7 days, there will be physical side effects to the Matrix, aka Elizabeth. The first time we see this come into effect is one night where 𝘂 takes a little bit of extra time to go fool around with this guy. And when Elizabeth wakes up the next day, her finger has aged like an old woman. So Elizabeth freaks out. She calls the people who gave her the substance and asks them if it's something she can reverse. And she finds out that she can't reverse it. So anything that 𝘂 does to Elizabeth becomes permanent. And this is going to become quite a conundrum. Because as 𝘂 is enjoying herself and her body and enjoying the spectacle and enjoying the spotlight, Elizabeth starts to fall further and further into isolation and depression. This is highlighted beautifully in a scene where it's Elizabeth's week, and in feeling really, really low about herself, she decides to reach out to Fred to go on a date. Except that as she's getting ready for this date, she falls into this spiral of despair, and she's constantly being shown 𝘂's face on a billboard right outside her window of her apartment. So she is really struggling. You're trying to patch something up that doesn't need patching, if you know what I mean. So it's so sad watching her fall into despair as she rubs off her makeup and loses her mind and just like accepts her fate and ends up not going on the date with Fred. He's texting her, looking for her. Hey, where are you? I hope you're okay. Again, he is the nicest, most decent human being to her in this whole film. And she can't even look him in the eye or meet him for a date. And that's terrible. There's also a few interactions with some outside people while all these things are progressing. We meet an old man in a diner who you find out is actually the young man who gave her the substance at the hospital. You see him in his older man form, and he starts taunting Elizabeth in a scene that starts to make her question what exactly she's doing with 𝘂. In another scene, we are introduced to Elizabeth and 𝘂's shitty male neighbor. I don't know his name. I don't really give a shit. All I'm going to tell you is he is literally there to show the difference in how people treat Elizabeth versus how they treat 𝘂. All these feelings and all this animosity builds up with each switch from 𝘂 to Elizabeth. So what ends up happening inevitably is that 𝘂 continues to take more and more from Elizabeth with little to no fight. There's one point where Elizabeth wakes up after 𝘂 has been abusing and using the stabilizer for far too long. And she wakes up and she's aged in all these weird parts of her body. Her hips hurt and her knee is out of place. She has to like crack her knee at one point to stand up out of a chair. And it's just awful. And the whole time you're watching this, you're like, just stop. Just stop. Why are we still going? Why is this still happening? And that's the moment you realize her despair is so deep, there is no going back. The scene that follows once she wakes up from that particular moment is wonderful with the French cuisine. She gets gifted a book from Harvey when she's fired from her aerobics show. And it's this French cookbook. And she's watching an interview with 𝘂 while she's making just this disgusting, burned, sloppy, greasy French food. The juxtaposition of shots is fantastic. And in particular, we get one shot with a bowl of eggs, going back to the egg metaphor. And as 𝘂 is talking trash about who Elizabeth Sparkle was on this interview, Elizabeth just blends those eggs. It's like just the obliterating of everything that was and a testament to what's to come. After this instance with the French food, 𝘂 wakes up.
Control yourself!
Margaret Qualley, you are amazing. I think I might be in love with you. She sees this mess and has decided at that point She no longer wants to share her body with this disgusting, sloppy, gross woman. And Sue continues to just disrespect this rule. And I think in their conscience, I think that this is Elizabeth's way of putting Sue on a pedestal where she feels so badly about herself and so low about herself that she is no one without Sue. And it becomes obvious in some of the following scenes how deeply she feels that about Sue and about her own worth. So Sue decides to take a bunch of stabilizer fluid from Elizabeth and not worry about it. In the process of this 3-month period where Elizabeth has been passed out on the bathroom floor and Sue is just living her life, Sue has been preparing to be the host of the spectacular New Year's Eve show for the TV station she has her aerobics show on. It's absolutely silly, the idea of this New Year's Eve show with this aerobics instructor as the host. I love it, and it's pure camp. There's nothing campier than a gorgeous woman appearing out of thin air and not only gifting her the biggest aerobics show on the channel, but then also giving her the New Year's Eve hosting job. We're setting up a bad night for Elizabeth and Sue. It's the night before the New Year's Eve show, but Sue starts degrading real rapidly. Sue starts to have a nosebleed. She starts to have brain blur. Things are starting to really progress. And she realizes that she has to switch over with Elizabeth in order to get more of the stabilizer fluid that she needs in order to keep herself okay. But in doing so, we are introduced to what happens to Elizabeth Sparkle when she has 3 months passed out on the bathroom floor and all her stabilizer fluid has been taken from her body. We get Gollum. So Elizabeth decides at this point she's had enough with Sue and she's not going to tolerate this anymore now that she looks like this, and that she would like to terminate the substance. And Elizabeth goes back to this weird warehouse to pick up the termination substance. Elizabeth goes back to her apartment, pulls Sue out into the living room, and injects her with this termination fluid, and immediately regrets it. When confronted with the reality of losing Sue, Elizabeth just can't do it because she just isn't confident enough in herself without Sue. Elizabeth takes what she had left of activator fluid from the original substance and shoots it back into Sue's arm to get her to wake up. And Sue wakes up, and a major, major fight ensues. I think because Sue has been strong for all these months and taking all this stabilizer fluid from Elizabeth, she just kicks Elizabeth's butt. And then the point of no return. Sue ends up killing Elizabeth in her fit of rage. And at that moment, the Matrix being dead means that Sue will not be able to last on this earth for much longer. So Sue goes to the New Year's Eve show because she's going to try to make this work. She is going to try to figure this out. And the whole time she's prepping for the New Year's Eve show and they're getting her ready and dolled up and everything, she is starting to lose her facilities. The sound in her ear is like rushing water. At some point, her nails start to peel off in an homage to The Fly, which we love. Her teeth are falling out. Her body is literally degrading in real time while they're getting ready for this show. And nobody seems to notice. That's the best part. She has this scene where she runs into Harvey and all these guys. They don't seem to notice that she's in distress. They're looking for a smile from the leading girl, and she gives them a little smile without her teeth because half of them have fallen out at that point. And that's enough for them. Move on with our night. The lack of care for Sue in these moments is highlighted and made more obvious by every single person she runs into in those moments. So in a panic, she rushes back to her apartment because she knows she still has some substance fluid just floating around in the house. And she decides that if she can't be her best self, maybe shooting herself with more of the substance will allow her to be her best self. So in her moment of sheer despair, she shoots herself with more substance. And we get 𝘂𝐿𝐼𝐴𝐶. 𝘂𝐿𝐼𝐴𝐶 is the best monster of 2024. And maybe just of this decade. We still have some time here, but I'd like to hedge my bets against 𝘂𝐿𝐼𝐴𝐶. She comes out and she is so cute, but she is also so messed up. There are faces where they don't belong, and body parts where they don't belong, and holes and orifices, and just weird stuff going on with her physical. But she is so freaking cute. She is so cute. And I'm kind of in love with 𝘂𝙀𝙀. So 𝘂𝙀 decides to take a cutout of Elizabeth's face, put it over her own, make sure she's got her pretty dress on. She gets a little bit of her hair did and her makeup and whatever. And she puts on an earring and, she's getting dolled up. So she shows up and she's hallucinating that everybody's in love with her and they're so happy to see her, yada, yada, yada. But in reality, nobody's there waiting for her. Nobody even recognizes that there's anything wrong with her until she gets on stage at the New Year's Eve show. It is amazing. It is amazing how little people seem to notice or care what is going on with this person. Amazing. She shows up to the show, gets on stage, gets in front of all these people. There's even like children in the audience and stuff. And she tries to put on her best, but she's literally falling apart under the mask. At one point, the Elizabeth face falls off and we are left staring at 𝘂𝙀𝙀 in the flesh. We then have a very Carrie-esque scene ensue where everybody in the audience starts freaking out about this monster being here, and there's screaming and there's blood and there's gore, there's death. All this stuff is happening. At one point, somebody hits Eliza Sue in the head and knocks it off, and another head grows back. At one point, there's a boob that falls out of her head, out of a hole. I mean, there's like so many things happening to her body while all this chaotic stuff is happening in the studio. You even have like a cut to Harvey and he's just sitting there dumbfounded. There's like nothing going on there. And I can't even imagine how that moment would have broken somebody like his brain. Again, blood spraying everywhere, people freaking out, this, that, the other. And then at one point, 𝘂𝙀𝙀 busts out of the back door of the studio and essentially her body just falls apart. And there's nothing left except Elizabeth's face. And her face on this piece of flesh just slowly crawls over to her star where we started on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And as she looks up, she's looking at the palm trees and then she starts to hallucinate the accolades and the glory and the sparkle in her life and all the people giving her all the praise and all the love. And as she's hallucinating all this superficial love for her, her face just disintegrates into her star. The next day, a street cleaner goes and sweeps up all the blood and muck from her star, and all that's left is a cracked facade of what once was. This movie is so much more than a body horror film, and both of these films really were, but these are both love letters to filmmaking and the true appreciation of what it takes to make a very compelling, good film. Both use comedy to heighten their points, but also use a ton of practical effects and blood to make their points too. And I don't know. After I watched The Substance, it just was a film I knew I was never going to forget. Even if I had only watched it the one time, there were so many scenes in that film that stuck with me that were just impactful and sad and well acted and well felt, that I recommend this film not just to people who are fans of the horror genre, but all sorts of people who just might love filmmaking generally. It was amazing. I love it. I highly recommend it. And obviously, on the weirdness scale, this film is also going to fall under the rating of, well, that was super fucking weird. You're not going to see any other primetime movie look like this, feel like this, and have this same kind of message be this impactful ever again. And if it is, I will eat my foot. But I think The Substance has solidified its place in film history. It's gotten a lot of really great press around it. It's gotten a lot of really great reviews. And after watching it myself, I can't recommend it enough. And I personally think it was my favorite film of 2024. So thank you again for joining me for another Well, That's Weird. My name is Madame De Fer. I obviously love weird shit. If you have any films that you'd like to recommend that I watch, comment below and let me know what you'd like to see on this show. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe to Rabotat Rec and follow us for more content just like this. One last thing I want to mention, but I have to get up for this. You see this? You see this design? Do you see this amazing design? This shirt was designed by one of our Rabotat fam, Morgan Tucker, and you can find this design and some other ones on the Rabotat Records web store. I'd head over there, take a look at what we got, and maybe show a little love and support to some of our Rabotat artists. My name is Madame De Fer, and well, that was weird. We'll see you on the next one.